Morning, sir. Gentlemen.
How are you?
Hey.
Nice to see you. I know. It's been a minute. Yes, good to see you. Why not?
2 days in a row.
Are we ready? Let's go. Oh, okay. Good afternoon, everybody, or good morning, rather. My name is Damon Wembley. I'm employed here at Elijah's Promise, and I've been here for like 2 years now. So actually, I found this place at sort of like a difficult time in my life, but now I can proudly say that, grateful to have found this place because it gives opportunities for individuals to come in, to eat, everybody's not homeless that comes here. A lot of people come here because they want to save money, because they work in a 9 to 5 or whatever. But saying that, just want to speak about the increase in the minimum wage that will create opportunities for individuals like myself to thrive. And so, in part in saying that, increasing the minimum wage is a significant, important part in my life. I worry less about having money for rent each month, whether or not I can afford to pay bills. So, mentally it's healthier for me. It's more financial freedom, definitely. So I get to do other things like splurge money on myself, go to the gym, see the guns, So, and constantly just struggling to make ends meet and figuring out ways to be physically and mentally physically exhausting and mentally exhausting at the same time. Though I have struggled, I'm proud to say that I have a better outlook on my future as far as the minimum wage being raised. Being paid $15 an hour can change the lives of a lot of people. The state of New Jersey just, like it did it for me, to be able to do an honest day's work, it shouldn't have to be a privilege. I'm happy that elected officials like Governor Murphy, and can listen to us and hear us out, hear ordinary citizens out who are working 9 to 5s and out there busting their humps and trying to make an ends meet for their families or themselves. So, that being said, thank you, Mr. Murphy, for listening, standing up for New Jersey's people. And without further ado, I want to introduce one of the hippest governors ever, who ever came to New Jersey, Governor Phil Murphy.
Thanks,
Give it up for him.
Right here, buddy. Thank you. Damon, you can introduce me anytime. Anytime, man. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, no problem.
I really appreciate your stepping up and saying what you said. I know we all do. If you turn your baseball cap around, you and I are going to get into a lot of trouble. So please keep it on backwards as a favor to me and the rest of us. I'm incredibly good morning, everybody. This is pretty warm in here, so we will not keep you. But thank you all for joining us at Elijah's Promise. This organization has been here for more than 30 years, providing for those who need a hand during life's challenging times and even those times when the paychecks just don't have enough in them. I was honored to be here with my wife and 4 children Thanksgiving morning, 2 Thanksgivings ago. And Michelle, it's great to be back. And I want to give a shout out. You'll hear from Michelle Wilson in a moment, the executive director. I'm going to introduce in a moment my partner and dear friend, Assembly Speaker Craig Coughlin. We'll take a couple of questions, but I want to just give a shout out to our host mayor, Jim Cahill, one of the best mayors in this entire state. Jim, thank you for having us. I just think you need a few more years of service to work out the kinks as mayor, Jim, and you'll have it all organized. But seriously, one of the really good guys. Freeholder Director Ron Rios. Ron, it's an honor to be with you, as always. Our Labor Commissioner, Rob Sarah-Angelo. Lots of representatives of organized labor. I won't mention them by name. Lots of representatives from advocacy groups, faith representation. We were together yesterday talking about minimum wage, and here we are again. And so to everybody here, I say Thank you. And again, it's a particular treat to be here with the speaker, and I'll introduce him in a moment. I had an offline conversation around a Labor Day event with Steve Sweeney, and he wanted me to say, and I will do as I promised, that he would be here today. I think he's got labor, his own day job, labor business, I believe out of state, if I'm not mistaken, but he is with us in spirit. Shortly after last year's election, our first appearance together, Craig, was to push for a path to $15 minimum wage, and here we are back again. And we're no less committed today. We're ready to take this on. The reason for this is quite frankly very simple. A stronger economy is underpinned by good jobs at better wages. A stronger economy no longer looks the other way as income inequality increases. A stronger economy relies upon more people being able to be full participants in its growth and expansion. Craig knows this, I know this, the folks here at Elijah's Promise know this too. That's why their workers already earn $15 an hour. It is antithetical to our values that we allow anyone who works 40 hours a week to be mired in poverty. If we are to be believed that we value an honest day's work, then we must ensure a wage which similarly values an honest day's work. Further, we need to change our mindset on who would gain from an increase from putting the minimum wage in a pathway to $15 an hour. This would have a profound effect on nearly 1 million New Jerseyans. And through them, by the way, it would benefit nearly 500,000 children across our state. Here are the facts about who would benefit from $15 an hour minimum wage. 80%, and this is there's a lot of myth busting we have to do around minimum wage. 80%, Brett, you all right there? Just checking. 80%, I think it's even higher, but 80%, according to our team, of the beneficiaries are over the age of 20. Nearly half work full-time, and nearly half are either in college or have finished college. More than half of them, meaningfully more than half, are women, and more than half are persons of color. Fully 1/4 of the folks who would benefit are parents themselves. We've seen study after study that shows there is no magic in what it is now of $8.60 an hour. In Middlesex County, someone working full-time at $8.60 an hour won't be able to make even 50%, not even 50% of what they need to meet just a basic budget for housing, food, health care, and transportation, among other necessities. In fact, no worker in any county in our state can make ends meet on $8.60 an hour. Adjusted for cost of living, New Jersey has the 5th most insufficient minimum wage in the United States. We're already hearing the rhetoric from the other side on why we can't possibly give minimum wage workers the ability to rise out of poverty. We heard it in 2016. We heard it in 2013 before that, when more than 60% of New Jerseyans voted to increase the minimum wage, and in 2005 before that. But their old arguments have been debunked time and again. We've gotten back the jobs that were lost in the recession. That's a good thing. What hasn't returned, however, is the ability of people in those jobs to grab their place in the middle class. A study from the Center of Budget and Policy Priorities lays this out. New Jersey now has the 7th worst rate of income inequality in the nation. The top 5% of households, on average, make more than 15.5 times what the average family in the bottom 20% of households earns. 15.5 times. For New Jerseyans to succeed, we need to help more families to succeed, not just a chosen few. When people earn a livable wage, they are more fully able to participate in our economy and help it grow. They don't have to struggle to pay the rent or to put food on the table or try to save for their future. They contribute to the real economy. By the way, I make this mistake myself. I talk about a stronger and fairer economy like they're disconnected. They're not. You raise minimum wage, that contributes to a stronger economy, period, full stop. Increasing the minimum wage would pump billions of new dollars into our economy to that point. It would allow many to grab the elusive toehold in the middle class. Employees, and this is a big point we have to underscore, aren't a cost item to be kept as low as possible. This is not goods or materials. They are what help businesses grow and succeed. And when employees earn a livable wage, morale increases and turnover decreases. The time for excuses is over. It's time for New Jersey to lead the way in proving that the key to a stronger economy is to make it fairer for those who work. The time is now to put ourselves on a clear path to $15 an hour minimum wage. And as I mentioned a minute ago, it is now my distinct pleasure to hand the podium over to my good friend and partner, Assembly Speaker, Craig Coughlin.
Thank you, Governor. Thank everybody for coming out this morning. And I'd like to take a couple of seconds to first recognize my colleague here from Middlesex, the best freeholder director in the state, Ron Rios. Ron, thanks for being with us this morning. I'd like to take a couple of minutes to recognize our host. Michelle, you know, Elijah's Promise does the really hard work. You really do God's work day in and day out, and we are so fortunate to have you in Middlesex County, but really in the state of New Jersey. And you know, as some of you may know, I've made addressing hunger one of the things that I wanted to get accomplished as the speaker, and if we do that, we'll have done a lot. And that's why I'm so proud that we worked with Governor Murphy. We put over $9 million in the budget this year to assist food pantries because they really do make a difference. And Elijah Promise is right at the top of that list. And thank our host, Mayor Cahill, who is the governor alluded to it, but you know, he's been centered to the renaissance of this great city and is somebody who fights each and every day for fairness and equality. And Mayor, it's a privilege to be with you today, and you keep up the great work that you're doing. Thank you, Damon, for making me feel really bad about my skinny arms. And, you know, at first when I thought, he had the hat turned around, a Red Sox. He's got a Red Sox hat on.
Easy now.
And I thought, I said, well, that's, you know, that's pretty gracious. There's some of us Yankee fans in here. And I need to rub it in. The Red Sox are doing so well. But then I realized as I was standing behind him, he was showing off to the governor and ticking me off. But good job. Well done. Well played. But the reason we're here today is to talk about the minimum wage and to recognize that every New Jerseyan who works for a living should get paid enough to be able to sustain their family. According to the Economic Policy Institute, workers in every state will need to earn at least $15 by 2024 to afford their basic needs. When we're talking about luxuries, we're talking about necessities like food and clothing. And I have the utmost respect for everyone who manages to stretch their earnings week to week, day to day, to make their ends meet. But they shouldn't have to in this wealthy state that we live in. We don't want families to survive. We want them to thrive, to live comfortably, and not to have to struggle to provide for themselves and for their children. The governor, you know, we thought we had addressed this to some extent back in 2013, and I was proud to be able to support the public question number 2 in an effort to derail the lack of growth in wages. And 61% of New Jerseyans, despite a well-funded opposition, agreed. We raised the minimum wage from $7.25 to $8.25 and tied it to the CPI. But the truth of the matter is that it hasn't worked well enough. Today's $8.60 an hour is, as the governor had pointed out, below near 20 states that have higher minimum wages. Another 9 states are working on getting their minimum wage to between $9 and $15 by 2022. And we Democrats have already made it clear that we support raising the minimum wage. I'm here today to reiterate that support for increasing the minimum wage and to commit to working to make real progress on that front. New Jersey's middle class is in decline. We have no option but to confront this head on. You know, despite windfall profits and a strong economy, corporations have failed to raise real wages or to make a real difference. And so it's up to us. And we can't ask New Jersey's working families to patiently wait for the minimum wage as it's structured right now to take into account the reality of living in one of the most expensive states in the country. So, to be clear, let's be clear on who we're talking about, too. The governor mentioned it as well. We're not talking about teenagers, which is one of the things we hear most often from opposition to the notion of increasing the minimum wage. According to the recent report by the New Jersey Policy Perspective, 92% of affected workers are adults of 20 years or older, and with about 65% of them working 35 hours a week or more. So when we talk about who should benefit from an increase in the minimum wage, we're talking about adults, heads of households, and those who work 2 or 3 jobs to pay the rent and put food on the table. What we're really talking about is the backbone of New Jersey's economy, workers who deserve their fair share. We're also talking about all of us, quite honestly. because we all know that the more income that people have, the more able they are to do things beyond work 2 or 3 jobs. They can get involved in their community. They can spend more time helping their children. And candidly, from a business perspective, they'll have more money to spend to help grow the economy. And so we must resolve our support for working people, the same people who voted for Governor Murphy, for me, increased the Democratic majorities in both houses. At the same time, we recognize that we must have to be responsible in the business community and work to make sure that we don't destabilize that as we phase in the minimum wage increase. But we all ran on increasing the minimum wage, and now it's our time to take action in that regard. We're working on a bill right now that will help move that forward. And I look forward to working with my Assembly caucus, Senate President Sweeney, and Governor Murphy to ensuring that working families receive the minimum wage that reflect the real cost of living in their state and help make their lives a little bit easier. Thanks, everybody, for coming out. Thanks for your support.
Thank you, Craig. I want to, again, I referenced her earlier. I want to, again, thank Michelle Wilson for having me back and having us here today to this extraordinary institution that helps so many who have nowhere else to turn. Let's hear it for the Executive Director of Elijah's Promise, Michelle Wilson.
Thank you. We want to welcome all of you today. Last night, I'm going to be honest, I didn't sleep well. I kept thinking, what am I going to say in my 1 minute that will address a topic that is so urgent and important to the guests that we serve? We serve over 110,000 meals a year here, 365 days a year. And I thought it couldn't be more fitting, actually, that we're all sweating and roasting, because that is what so many of our guests live with every day. They're outside doing hard labor. They're in places where the environment isn't great. They're not making enough in an hour to provide a healthy, nutritious lunch to buy that out. And I am so grateful that you picked us to be here today to talk about this, because it's an issue we live with every day, and we applaud your efforts. We hope you'll come back when the bill passes. We are grateful for all of you that you're here, and we just want to say on behalf of all those we serve, we're sort of like the little engine that could here at Elijah's Promise, that what you're doing in this room changes lives. We use the tagline that food changes lives, and what everyone is doing in this room will profoundly change lives to provide for people who can't provide for themselves. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Michelle. Well said. Yeah. Jim just said whatever you did, the lack of sleep, Michelle, worked, because that was brilliant. I agree with that. Time for a couple of questions. Anybody? David, how are you? I haven't seen you in a while.
Thank you. Good to see you. Who are you going to appoint to Cory Booker's seat now that he's going to be expelled from the Senate?
Cory Booker also supports the Fight for 15.
I assume that was an off-topic question. I couldn't. I'm trying to find my way back. Hadn't given that much thought, David. So, but thank you. I'm a huge Cory Booker fan.
Then my actual question is: we talked about teenagers and
Yes.
others who aren't full-time workers per se. Is that something that's going to be considered in this bill? And when are you going to come up with a bill?
Yeah, I think Craig should answer the second part. I think we both hope sooner than later, and as he mentioned, they're working on it. I've stood for with one notable exception. I've been in the clean $15 category. The notable exception is, and Craig alluded to this, for the business community, we got to be careful of the sticker shock. You can't get there. You can't make that leap overnight. So this has to be phased in over a series of years. Others have different opinions about different elements of it. I think we'll see how that turns out, but I continue to be sort of in the clean category with the phase-in over a period of years. In terms of timing, any comment on that?
Well, thank you, Governor, and David, thanks. As I said, we are in the process of putting together a draft. We've worked on it a little bit over the summer. I'm going to make that a priority to get something in place this fall.
Yeah, we sat, I guess you and Steve and I sat a couple of weeks ago, and I think this is one of the top 2 priorities that the 3 of us collectively, is that fair to say?
I think that's
see, we want to get done in the next couple of months. Please.
Are there any exemptions that you're considering at this point?
It's still in the you know, we're in the formulation phase. We need to take a look at everything. There are, as you know, differing views from all sorts of phases of the economy and segments of the population. We're going to try to put together a bill that we know will pass, that will achieve what it is that we want to get to, which is $15 an hour. And how we get there, that path is still, you know, being developed.
Do you think a clean bill could pass the legislature?
Well, I mean, I think that there will be perhaps some challenges in doing that. So we've got to work through that and figure out where we're going to, what Rubicons we're going to try to cross.
I'll tell you, a bill with doesn't have a multi-year phase-in, I don't think. I'm speaking
no, you're
practice
right.
without a
And
license, that's not going to happen.
I think that, and I don't need to speak for him, he's not
Yeah.
here, but at the last event, as the governor alluded to, was when Congressman Norcross rolled out a federal plan that had a phase-in period.
Yeah.
And I think there is agreement among the governor, the Senate president, and me that we need to phase this in over a period of time.
Dustin.
Thank you. Senator Menendez has come out in favor of, for lack of a better term, killing some of these ICE contracts in North Jersey county jails. Where do you stand on this?
Listen, it's a county decision, but count me on the side of the immigrant community, particularly in this administration. Period, full stop, right? And by the way, ICE is an example. There are so many examples to choose from, so I shouldn't say it's the best example. It's a very good example of how institutions have been politicized under this president. I served as U.S. ambassador in Germany. We had over 40 government agencies. ICE was one of them. With the proper civilian leadership, trust me, there is a reasonable mission. But what's happened under this president is ridiculous. So.
Do you see some level of hypocrisy by Democrats who are fighting Trump tooth and nail, specifically on immigration, and yet benefiting from the policies that he's created?
I mean, I'll let others speak for themselves in a particular county, but there's no hypocrisy here. We're on the side of the immigrants, and we're on the side of depoliticizing a government agency, period. Please.
Just to ask about all the applications that came in for the medical marijuana
Yes.
CC licenses, what's the criteria going to be for narrowing those down to say?
So I don't want to speak for the Commissioner of Health, but the Department of Health has put together a very a good group of folks to call balls and strikes, and they've got a whole series of criteria, and I'll let them speak to that. The big reaction for me was the supply-demand imbalance. You know, we have executive authority to increase this by another 6. I mentioned minimum wage is one of the top couple of priorities on that list is marijuana. And I know Craig and the Senate President are both on this likewise. That regime needs to be further opened up, but it needs to be done through legislation. So we've done what we can do. It should give you an indication of the supply-demand imbalance of 8 years of this system being gummed up. You know, we should have long ago had a much bigger, more robust system in place with much more access, many tens of more thousands of participants. You've probably heard me say this before. Michigan, about our size, came to this later, had, you know, over 10 times the amount of patients enrolled in the system. The list of ailments that makes you eligible was much longer. We're getting there. So we've lengthened the list. We've destigmatized the physician's involvement. I'm optimistic. I don't want to put words in Craig's mouth. I'm optimistic we'll get the legislation we need to further open it up. But in the meantime, we're going to have supply-demand imbalances like the one you've seen.
What's your latest thinking now, on recreational marijuana licenses if that passes this session?
I'll defer because we're working with legislative leadership on both adult use as well as medical. I'll defer to the speaker.
Look, I think we're working, and I think we're getting very close to having bills in place to address both adult use and expansion of medical marijuana. I think there's going to be, we still have a few more details to work out. There were a number of proposals among various legislators, and it was important to get everybody together on the same page, and we've gone through that. We're going through that process, and I think we're at the final stage of that. And so I think that in relatively short order, we're going to be able to start to work with the governor's office to put together a bill that we can collectively get behind and get over the goal line.
So I know there are a couple of mayors, I think this morning having a press conference, Mayor Baraka, Mayor Fulop, social justice continues to be the main driver, at least I'll speak for myself in terms of why we're doing this. So that box has to be adroitly checked, including how you look back, as Craig has pointed out many times. That's easy to say, more complicated to do, but also going forward, who participates in this industry going forward. David.
Governor, yesterday you campaigned with Mikey Sherrill. The last time there was a minimum wage referendum in New Jersey, it didn't pass by as high a margin in the areas of the state where the Democrats are seeking to pick up congressional seats. Does it concern you that having this debate this fall on minimum wage could affect the chances of those Democratic candidates?
That's a good question. I think the answer is, for me, resoundingly no. I know Marcia, at least, was with me yesterday. And I say that because, what was it, 2013, Craig? Was it?
2013 was
yeah.
the public question.
I think we're in a very different world 5 years later. There's enough experience around the country to see how this actually has impacted communities, the business community, obviously, which is one of them. You know, if you're in a low-margin business, and we understand that, a food retailer, for instance, you don't necessarily, you're not running to this idea. But I think there's enough evidence that you could stand up and say, you know what, this makes sense, even in a more purpley part of the state, which includes some of the 11th district, as you know. I think in the interest of everyone's well-being, we're going to shut, unless you have something else to add. Anybody? I want to thank Michelle again.
One quick follow-up on the marijuana question. You referenced the two mayors.
David, jump right in, please.
Thank you. You referenced those two mayors who talked about the bill that's coming up, the marijuana bill. They also are calling for the authority of individual municipalities to determine how many licenses they should allow. They want to see that included in the bill. Do you like that?
I'll defer. This is still being baked, so let's defer on specifics like that.
The speaker was nodding. Does that mean yes? Or?
That means I'm agreeing that we should defer on this until we get there.
I don't want to shut. David, anything else you want to get off your chest before? Okay. I want to thank Michelle. I want to thank this guy, my favorite new Red Sox fan, Damon. Thank you, man, for your courage to get up here and speak, and for the example that you live. Speaker, always an honor. Mayor, thank you. Commissioner, Freeholder Director, to all the advocates who have been working so tirelessly, and organized labor representatives and faith representatives who have worked tirelessly for years on this. It's an honor to be with you in this fight. Thank you, everybody.
Everyone is invited down to the soup kitchen for lunch. The main rush is over. It's air conditioned downstairs. They made plenty of extra food, so you can follow the group out. And we've got cookies, chocolate chip cookies by Gabe. Do you want to? Right there from our culinary school.
Excuse me, thank you so much. I'm Sarah, and I coordinate advocacy for the Lutherans and the Episcopalians, but mostly the Coalition of Religious Leaders International. Yeah, and I'm not letting you go. Well, I'm not either. So hang on. We're really, the Coalition of Religious Leaders, we're really concerned about tip workers. I'm sorry. Tip workers, because the last time we did the referendum, minimum wage was increased. Tip workers didn't get anything, and this is a huge concern of ours around. If they make $2.13 an hour, I mean, they work for their tips.
They do.
They don't get a paycheck because it all goes to a vote. So
Got it.
I actually met with the partners and the bishops yesterday, and they're all in. So whatever we